We live stream this show every morning on our social media platforms, on our digital platforms. Spice FM KE is our Facebook page. We are live streaming on Twitter as well. Spice FM KE on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Of course, you can tune in and watch us as we have our next guest this morning requires no introduction, really, per se. We have the Director of Public Prosecutions, Noordin Haji. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Karibu to the studio. Yeah. Now, of course, you've come in pretty early, Asante Sana. You know, this shows you're an early riser.
I think it's very telling of sort of the nature of his job. He has to be out of here in half an hour.
He's a man who is at war. Since the moment he got into office, he basically just said, "I have declared war," and you've been at war from the very beginning. Hey, how is our war going?
Lord. I'm not sure whether, we'll call it a war, but yeah, we're trying our best. Yeah.
Of course, you won the 2019 Leadership Integrity Award, no doubt, in a very short space of time, having come into office. And we've seen some senior government officials and politicians who've been implicated in scandals, and they've faced your wrath very quickly. So you've come in and done things differently. Can you tell us what it is you came in and what you've been doing differently from your predecessor?
Well, I don't think there's much that we've been doing differently, apart from one. The Constitution itself, if you look at the Constitution, it requires that public servants highlight to the public what they do in terms of the freedom of information and letting the people know exactly what is going on. It is not a pre-serve for individuals, but when you're working there, you're supposed to work for the public. So what we've done, in essence, is to ensure that whatever we're doing for the good of the public, and not to enhance anything for ourselves individually. And I think that's been the difference in terms of of how we've approached issues at the DPP.
I think on the face of it, your presence is a lot more felt. This is what I'm getting at. We've seen a lot more arrests of some very senior officials, which we hadn't evinced previously. Is this just because you're publicizing it a lot more? Is there a different approach you're taking?
Well, it's both. What we did is when we came into the office, is we decided that strategically we will look at cases that will have high impact, in the sense that it will have the desired effect to stop corruption or to slow down corruption in Kenya. And because of that, we looked at different packages and then different strategies to roll out, which of course included making sure that it is publicized, making sure that whatever case we were working on had the desired ripple effect to slow down corruption. And that's what we did in essence. It was being done before, in the sense that there was a lot of corruption cases being taken, a lot of cases being taken in terms of it was more quantity and not quality. And what we did is we tried to narrow down in terms of the number of cases that we're taking, but take cases that had quality and had the desired effect, again, to slow down corruption. It's just not about prosecutions.
Right.
It's just not about investigating and taking people into court. But there's also a message to it, to the public, that nobody's above the law, and that if you break the law, no matter what background you come from, then you will face it to its fullest.
What would you say success would look like in this clearly difficult task that your office has undertaken?
Of course, I know people have been talking about conviction. Success would be us being able to convict these individuals. But success is also part of what we've done so far. You cannot arrive at convictions without doing what we've done. But then the fallacy of the argument that the DPP and the DCI have not convicted anybody.
Yes.
Is that this is, conviction is not just, does not lie on me and the DCI alone. It's a chain. It's the criminal justice system, and it's about everybody else in that chain. And then the argument that is usually put out there that these cases are weak. How do you conclude the case is weak when we've not even sat down and heard it?
The hearing hasn't started yet.
Precisely. You can only conclude that at the end of...
When you hear the evidence that you present.
At the end of the case. And so, people are playing around with words and with the public's emotions. What we are saying is we are asking the public to be patient, and I am sure that we will get convictions. And I'm sure where we don't, we will be able to point out why. Whether it was on a technicality, or we were just not given a level playing field. And I've been arguing about us being given
a level playing
field.
What is it that makes you say that the field is not level?
Well, I think, we don't need to hide, and I've always said this, we don't need to put our heads
in the sand.
We all know that there was a problem, that there's a systematic problem, and this problem transcends the whole system, whether it's in the executive, whether it's in the judiciary, whether it's in
Parliament.
In Parliament, precisely. In all the three arms. I hope you don't bash me, even in the media.
There's a Kenyan saying that emanated during the time of President Kibaki's tenure as president, and that is, grand corruption fights back.
Yes.
Have you experienced it, and in what form has it taken?
Oh, in many forms, and yes, we've experienced it. I don't want to. Some of it is in court, of course. One of the reasons why we are asking that the governors and other office holders should step aside is because continuously and I'm not talking about a certain individual, but the experience has been, if people stay in office, they interfere with investigations, they interfere with the evidence, they are able to use
their office
to intimidate people,
including
prosecutors,
to subvert justice.
Precisely. So there is that. There is also the silent things that are happening behind the scene. There's been a lot of attempt to corrupt officers from different levels, including whether it's in the judiciary or other arms.
Your own office as
my
well?
own office, of course, my own office.
Have they attempted to corrupt you as well, sir?
Well, I
ask this aware that there are certain questions you actually can't answer directly. But
No.
I ask, yes.
I have not given anybody that opportunity.
Yes.
And I thank God that nobody has come. I think they find me
very...
No, they find me very... yes. They find me unapproachable, which is good, and I'm comfortable with that.
Absolutely. Now, you talk about keeping people out of office. Of course, this was very contentious, and I'm referring to the Justice Mombi Gugi ruling, whereby somebody was asked to step out of office, stay away from office, and it became contentious as to what the definition of office was. Did it include functions? Was it physical access to the premise, and so on? But it's the wider question here is, are you willing to compromise certain civil liberties, for instance, in order to fight this war against graft, in the same way we've seen in terrorism, where some rights have been taken away and people are quite happy to lean that way? If you go into the airport, the search procedures are not what we had 20 years ago or before 9/11, and people are okay with that. Now, you as the DPP, would you be pushing for us to go in that direction where we can not take away people's rights, but sort of
limit them
in order to fight this?
I think the Constitution and the law itself is clear that when you're a criminal, then you put yourself in that position where your rights will be limited. But if you're talking about in terms of what is captured in the Constitution, I would not advocate for any limitations, whether it's human rights or civil liberties. We as prosecutors and also my colleagues as investigators, we have to abide to the Constitution. We have to get warrants if, for example, we want to look into your phones or undertake surveillance. These are pertinent and very important rights that I think and I believe should not be trampled on or interfered with. So within reason and within the Constitution, then we are okay. And I think this is what we've been trying to do. Everything is, of course, within the Constitution. We've tried to stretch some of the interpretation by the courts because we strongly believe that we have a better chance in limiting some of this abuses through the court processes than, for example, going to Parliament, where sometimes it is tedious and then there's the politics in it that does not allow us to achieve for the good of Kenya and Kenyans themselves.
And in adhering to the context and the framework of the Constitution, so getting warrants, search warrants and so on, do you not then find this limiting in some of your investigations? I know there was the case with Kidero, for instance.
Well, that came about because of the interpretation or misinterpretation, in our opinion, of the powers that EACC has,
Right.
and how it was framed in the ASECA, that is the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act. And those are issues that we'll go to court. We've appealed and we will argue in court. But that does not in any way mean that we should go out there and maybe, like China, be allowed to, at our discretion, get into your privacy. I don't believe in that. I think if other countries, democratic countries, have been able to live within, then we should be able to do that. It's about being professional. It's about getting the right facts at the right time and making those applications. And I think our courts are good enough, and they would allow us once we do that.
Okay, I'll put it very simply. So surely you have somebody who you suspect to have stolen money. We're using layman's terms here. They've stolen money and they've stashed it in a bank account.
Yes.
If you have to then get a warrant, a search warrant, or maybe they've stashed it in their home, if you have to get a search warrant, does this not give the person or the individual enough time to remove the money from under the mattress or to change things, making your job more difficult?
Yes, and this is where we've gone to the Court of Appeal. So we have the penal code. The penal code, the interpretation is different from the ASECA, that is the anti-corruption, where they said that we have to give notice. Nowhere in the world do we have such instances where if you're applying for a warrant, usually you go to the magistrate and it's in private chambers. The person does not have to know. The magistrate just needs to be satisfied that you are not infringing or witch hunting the individual, and then you're given. So the individual does not have to be notified. But there is this strange ruling that we got where now they're saying that they have to be notified. And, I always say it's only in Kenya where everything is upside down, where you have the Senate inferior to Parliament,
Right.
and everywhere in the world the Senate is
the upper house.
It's the upper house.
So, but these are challenges that we have. It's also, maybe about corruption fighting or graft fighting back, but we will fight back also. As long as we are able to go to court and put our arguments and we are able to appeal, we are satisfied that we will get the
There's
right
a system
ruling.
that can work for you.
Precisely. There are challenges, of course. We recognize that.
Yeah.
And as I said, our system has been systemic. I mean, corruption has been systemic in Kenya. It will take time, but we are determined to fight. And this is part of the reason why we also try to publicize as much as possible. It's for Kenyans to understand what we are doing and where we are at. And it's their right, and it's their constitutional right.
Right.
The right to information.
In the studio this morning, in the Situation Room, is the Director of Public Prosecutions, Noordin Haji. Of course, we are talking about the fight against corruption and the work of the DPP in fighting corruption. And of course, if you have any questions, we'd like you to join the conversation on Twitter at SpiceFMKE and also on Facebook, SpiceFMKE. But the Director, of course, you're here today, and we saw the day before yesterday the Governor of Nairobi, who is out on bail, making some move in terms of he nominated a deputy governor. We also saw you react to that, and in December we saw you react to the similar kind of move by the governor, Lenol Kulal. Have you moved to court to challenge this, or what is it exactly that you're complaining about?
No, okay, I'll make it clear. There are two issues, and people are confused. There was, when we were in court, there was a direction or ruling by the magistrate that we should not discuss the case. So certain individuals think that because I said we are going to court, then I'm discussing the case. I'm not discussing the case, and I will not discuss the case here because there are directions and orders from the court. But what I will say is that it is my opinion that the bail terms have been breached, and because of that, we are going to court. One, to cancel the bail term if the courts allow us, and two, to get further clarity. What does it mean by you not going to office?
Yeah.
That actually has been an interesting debate. We ourselves discussed it yesterday at great length as to what this term office means. But I'm going to digress slightly. The media is often referred to as the fourth estate. Would you say that they have been useful in this fight that you have against corruption?
Oh, yes.
And how have they been useful? And how much more can they be useful?
I think they've been very useful. The fact that it's a vibrant and, in my opinion, free media. You're able to discuss in detail issues that initially would not have been discussed as they are today. It highlights to the public. It helps also forestall corruption from occurring. Sometimes your investigations are very thorough also, and they help us point us to the right direction. And I think anywhere in the world, protecting human rights, fighting corruption, terrorism, and all these other crimes, you'll not be able to do it without a free and vibrant media. And for one, and I've said this, that I will go out of my way to protect that freedom. And we really appreciate what the media is doing. Of course, like in any other, fraternity, there are individuals who have been compromised. There are individuals who are working with the corrupt. But all in all, to be fair, I think the media has played a very, very positive role.
There are those that have accused you. Not accused, but there are those that have commented and said that you prosecute through the media.
Yes.
You've also seen, of course, on social media, people calling you the socialized DPP and the socialized DCI, because whenever you have a case, you make very strong statements in the media statements and saying this is what we have against this person, and then after that, that whole issue dissipates. What do you say to that?
I'm not sure about whether it dissipates.
In terms of
because the cases are in court.
Yes.
Of course, with the media, it's the big news. After a while, then you move on because
to the next news.
To the next one. Yes.
big.
It's also not feasible to be able to cover each and every. But the matters are in court. And if they're saying that I can count the number of appearances that I've given, I had to be hounded for this one. I was very reluctant. But at the end of it,
we appreciate you coming.
But at the end of it,
yes.
I think the Constitution itself is very clear about the right to information, and that's what we're doing. If this modern approach to ensuring that Kenyans understand what we are doing is seen as being socialized, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for those individuals. Most of them are politicians,
of course,
and I would also argue the same, that they're also socialites because they're always in the media and they always want to be in the headlines. So it doesn't really hold water.
It's
in
one
my
of those
opinion.
cases, you're damned if you do, damned
Yes,
if you don't. Because if
precisely.
you don't give the information, they
Precisely.
say you're too quiet. If you
Or
do, they
he's not
say
doing
you're
his
seeking
job.
But then
attention.
there's the other aspect. If you are doing something that has hitherto not been done before, then you are actually suffering the backlash of anything that changes the norm.
Yeah.
Because
disruption.
yes, you're interrupting a process that people have been accustomed to, and the knee-jerk reaction is to fight it even before you've understood it. Yes.
And the thing is, I think people, most of these individuals are uncomfortable because we've decided to take the narrative ourselves. and to control it, and to show exactly what we're trying to do. And this is what is making people uncomfortable. But we're not about to stop. There's nothing that is unconstitutional or illegal that we're doing. If you look at all the democracies, whether it is in the UK, in the US, all common law jurisdiction, this happens. Statements are given, and people take time to explain why what we are doing is right. Furthermore, we've declared corruption, a crisis in Kenya. There's no other way we are going to be able to do this if we don't do this. If you look at America after 9/11, and I am actually equating this to 9/11 because of the impact that it has on Kenyans.
Yeah.
They did all this, all what we're doing. So it's nothing new. Whether it's in the UK or even in jurisdictions like India, they do this. So accusing us of being socialites is
that's
just
corruption fighting back, I would say.
That's part of the system fight.
Precisely.
What do you say? How do you feel in terms of the confidence of the process that the cases take when you take a case to court? And so far, the number of cases that you've said, high impact, you chose these cases, took them to court. The length that it's taking to actually even you to start prosecuting these cases and presenting your case. What do you feel about that?
Well, we are trying to address this issue. So we have what you call the NCAJ, which is the National Council on Administration of Justice, that is chaired by the Chief Justice. So what we've agreed is that we will try to ensure that corruption cases are dealt with at the shortest possible time. And what the CJ is doing is he's created more courts and he's given us more magistrates to do that. But that is as much as we can, and I have also added as many prosecutors as possible so that we don't have any excuses. But that you can do that. The other side of the coin that you have to look at is you have the defense lawyers, and a lot of time they have numerous applications, and I think in their opinion. If you can delay as much as possible,
of course,
and Kenyans forget about it.
Justice delayed.
Precisely, and Kenyans forget about this issue, then they can do whatever they want behind the scenes. But what we are saying, no, we are still going to highlight it to Kenyans. If there are any delays, we are going to make sure that people understand that there are delays, who is delaying it. At some point, they did attempt to come up with a table to show that it is the magistrates and the prosecutors who are delaying. But within a week, I think they decided to withdraw it because it was very clear that it is the defense that is actually involved in all this
playing the games.
Shenanigans. Yes.
I was listening to a case of a gentleman with the name of Harvey Weinstein. He is
the famous Harvey.
That's the one and only Harvey.
You mean the Harvey in the States?
The Harvey in the States.
Oh, I thought you were saying Harvey.
No, not the lawyer. Not HAVI. HARVEY. Okay. No. Not our Harvey.
Okay.
The American Harvey.
Okay.
The Weinstein one.
The Weinstein one.
Okay.
And what I found of interest is they stated categorically, this is what caught my attention, that the process of actually getting the thing to court was going to take a month, and they expected the case to take 6 months. Categorically, 6 months. Now, you have very many women who have brought their issues to court, but only 2 women's cases are actually being leveled against him. So I thought, 6 months, in what one would consider as a layman, a damn thing. I mean, it's not as though they don't have enough evidence, but it's taking 6 months. Perhaps part of what you're doing has been educating the public, even though it may not seem like it. But remember, we come from a background where in a previous time, court cases leading to even jail terms could take a day. You could be taken to court that same day, you could be sentenced, and that same day you could be heading to your new destination. It was a long time ago, but it happened. Now,
then there was something wrong also.
Something very wrong there. But you see, it's a mindset that is difficult to run away from. So even as these things are explained, I think you need to bombard the public even more with this understanding, because this understanding that court cases take a short time is something that people must understand. They actually don't.
But should we shorten the line?
They can be shortened.
And I think this goes into what Nyeri was saying.
This
civil
leads,
liberties and all, and say there are some things that you cannot, keep taking to higher courts and making numerous applications.
The DPP has been very innovative here. Your office launched a plea bargain program back in October to try and decongest the courts. Can you tell us a little bit more about this, how it works, so Kenyans can understand, and whether it is indeed helping in the fight against corruption?
Okay, the thing is, plea bargaining has always been there.
Sure.
The problem is, I think, it was not being utilized as it should have. Now, just like the American plea bargaining, the purpose of plea bargaining is for you to come in and say, yes, I've done this, but I'm willing, to enter into an agreement with the prosecutors.
Right.
One, by reducing my sentences, or other terms, and two, in exchange for you saying that yes, I did this, or this did happen, or give more evidence, or agree to become a witness on behalf of the prosecutions against a certain individual. So this, in essence, cuts time, cuts the unnecessary long
court processes,
that would take time. Time is also money.
Sure.
You have prosecutors, you have judges, you have investigators who are there, they're being paid. If we can move on to the next, this is a very good option for us to exploit. When it comes to corruption, what we are hoping it would do is for individuals to come and say, yes, I did this. This is the money that I took. I'm willing to return it in exchange for 6 months or 7 months. I've said 7 months for governors,
right?
Because I don't think they deserve to go back to office after that.
So it has got to be more than 6 months.
Precisely. And 6 months means they can't go.
Sure.
Yeah.
And of course, return the money. We can, if you look at the ASECA, it's 3 times what you stole.
Right.
This is something that can
So that's punitive in itself.
Yes,
that you pay back
but
more.
when it comes to plea bargaining, now we can negotiate. You can return 2 times or 1.5 times instead of 3 times. You don't have to go for and instead of 10 years, we can say 5. Or instead of a year, we can say 7 months.
And there's a framework for this?
Yes,
or?
there is a framework. There's an agreement that you enter.
Right.
You sign and you're bound by it. The magistrate also witnesses and agrees to it. And we are bound also by the magistrates or the court's directions.
Would it contradict any minimum custodial sentences, any minimum sentences?
No. Of course, you start with the minimum.
Right.
But if the magistrate is inclined to give anything less,
Right, they would do so.
That is something that can be negotiated. But we would start with a minimum, of course.
And have you actually gone through this process with anybody? They're returning the money, or are you still in negotiations? Because Waitito was mentioned as an individual that was looking to engage.
No. You see, it's also at our discretion.
Right.
If as prosecutors we also feel we have a very strong case and we want to go for the full hog,
Sure.
We will do that. Sometimes plea bargaining is where you feel, okay,
maybe.
Because the thing with criminal law is beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Sure.
So both parties are like, I might end up in court, in jail.
In jail or not.
Yeah. So there is discretion for us. We're not going to go for all cases. And I think if you look at the optics, it would not be right for us to start with governors at this point.
Sure.
We will start with the smaller fishes and see how it works and move on, because it's something new. We also don't want it to be abused.
Sure.
We are testing it out there, and we're going to build.
Why do you say it wouldn't perhaps be appropriate to start with, say, individuals at the level of governors?
You see, it's about the messaging.
Yes, the optics, as you said.
But most of them would want to get scot-free, so they would not be willing. They would want to just pay. They think it's just about the money.
Pay back.
They'd want to pay
and go
back
back to office.
And we are not willing to to do that.
I agree with you, actually. The optics would really look bad if it's a governor who's been accused and the public looks at kind of cases and the amount of money that is said to have been stolen by a governor. And then you hear that they went to the DPP and struck a deal and signed a paper, and now they're back in office and they're free to continue running and even contesting the next election. Surely that's the next point that we start saying Noordin Haji has been compromised. So I think, yes.
Do we have
And
individuals?
you have the chicken thief who's serving.
Yes, and then we start comparing and saying
armed
so and so.
robbery.
Oh yeah, we stole a chicken with just
So-
because
so
we were
now
carrying a
what-
knife.
So now what we're doing is we're asking the chicken thieves to return the chicken to see if they can pay.
Yeah.
Then, you know,
2 chickens.
they go back home. Yes, three chickens.
Yes, return 3 chickens.
Yeah.
Do we have individuals who've actually volunteered and come forth to try and work out a plea bargain with you? People
Yes.
who are, yes.
Yes, there's been quite a number, especially as witnesses. And some people will be surprised in some of the big cases also. So we do have that. Yeah.
And do we have cases where things have actually been returned and the government has actually received back what was taken from them?
Yes. So what we've done is just before the end of the year, Treasury allowed the ODPP to have its own prosecution fund. And I'm happy to say that in that prosecution fund so far, we have almost 2.9 billion returned. And I'm sure there will be much more that will come in.
Is this separate from the Asset Recovery Authority agency?
Yes, it is separate from the asset
Separate.
recovery.
Right.
There's a bit of a difference. Asset recovery is under the Office of the Attorney General, and it's more civil in terms of what it pursues.
As opposed to criminal.
Ours is criminal, but we work hand in hand.
What do you estimate roughly would be the amount that you actually anticipate we could, in an ideal situation, get back from these perpetrators if we were to actually get all of it? What sort of amount would we be talking about?
It's billions, and hundreds
Hundreds of billions.
Yes.
That's out there that's been stolen by people who are walking scot-free.
Now-
You've got your work cut out for you.
We look
try our
at
best.
convictions as being sort of the biggest indicator of your success in terms of the psyche of the people in general. Other than convictions and the investigations that you do, what other activities are you involved in to fight corruption? We know that you've engaged the media and that acts as a deterrent, so you're reducing corruption. What other activities are you involved with as a multi-agency task force, so not just
Yeah.
individually, but
I
as
mean,
government?
It's good that you pointed at the MAT. So we work with the MAT, and the chair of the MAT is the Attorney General. So this is a coordinating outfit. A lot of people misunderstand what the MAT is. It has no powers to either do prosecution or investigations. Those are rested. So prosecution is rested in the ODPP,
Right.
and it's independent of the MAT. Investigations, of course, the different investigative arms. The MAT is only a coordinating, and a lot of what we're doing in MAT is to make sure that the different arms do not do things differently
Right.
without knowing. So now, as I said, in a very strategic approach, we look at things holistic, especially when it comes to corruption. So you look at the person, whether the person has paid tax, and most of the time these corrupt individuals don't pay tax.
Sure.
So we can charge them on tax issues. We look at whether they've been involved in money laundering. How did the money move, and where did it end up with? Who with and where. So we work with what you call the FRC and the central bank, which is part of the MAT, the KRA, and other bodies that are the asset recovery. There is the DCI, and there's also intelligence that helps us in collecting intelligence. So we are doing a lot in trying to ensure that our investigations are wholesome. Before we would just charge them on the generic charges of abuse of office, and that's it.
Right.
Then somebody goes back and enjoys the millions
Sure.
or the billions that they stole. So now we are being very very deliberate and inquisitive, and the investigations are in depth. So there is that, but there is also the issue of civic education. We're trying to come up with that, and we are reaching out to people with ESCC and the DCI, and we've had a lot of these public engagements out there to try and sensitize them on their rights to access to justice, on their rights as Kenyans, and also on the role that Kenyans can play in fighting corruption.
And what is that actually, since we're on this platform? What role can the Mwananchi or individual citizens play in fighting corruption?
Well, to start with is not to be
not to be corrupt.
Not to be corrupt and not to intend
Themselves.
corruption.
Yeah.
This is the biggest problem. A lot of us want shortcuts. You don't want to go through the
the rightful channels.
the right, yeah. But the thing is, when you go down there, a lot of Kenyans, if given the opportunity, not to take shortcuts, because everybody else is taking shortcuts, and the first person who asks you to do that is that public officer.
Sure. Yeah.
They will do it. That is the thing. And now what we are trying to do is to ensure that the public officers do not ask or do not approach Kenyans for bribes.
If I recall correctly, you talked about public officers or policemen having cameras on them. Is that correct?
The traffic, yes.
The traffic. Okay, tell us a little bit more about that.
The thing
sounds
is,
very Western and American, and
well, it's we have Safaricom, we have M-Pesa,
technology.
Absolutely,
we have technology. There's nothing
Sure.
there's nothing Western about it. We have our own local technology, and I think with the IT backbone that we have, it can be done very easily.
okay.
The reason why I say this, I think, if we had body cams for police officers that of course are working, the problem is we will start and then they don't work.
Sure.
At some point that are working, we will reduce a lot of abuse on the roads, a lot of corruption on the roads, and I think it will have a positive result in terms of how we deal with the traffic, and of course this is a pilot project. It will, in my opinion, if we start there, then we can have it on all offices.
You can move it to other areas.
Precisely. If you go to London, if you go to China, if they have them, and it's a simple technology. It's not mind-boggling.
Yep.
And I have asked the IG if they consider it, that we use local content, we use local suppliers, because we have a very strong. If Microsoft and Apple and all this are here,
Sure.
and they have hubs here, I think we can do it.
And their leadership is actually Kenyan.
Precisely.
It shows you that we have the capacity. What was the initial response to this proposal? Not just from the IG, even from the public. When people hear that,
I think the public, you should tell me.
No, I liked it.
I think it's a deterrent in the sense, if the policeman or the police individual knows that they'll be questioned as to why that gadget doesn't work, they'll make sure it works. And if it works, it means you cannot perpetrate the very thing that we accuse policemen of doing all the time.
Yeah.
So as a gadget, it's actually well thought out.
It is. If you remember in Ghana, what they did is they removed the pockets from the policemen's uniforms in a bid to create a different environment. So that didn't work. But with something like this,
I'm sure they used the socks.
Absolutely. You can put money anywhere.
In your hat.
But with this, of course, it's the idea that you can collect the evidence and actually bring to book any policeman who contravene.
Yeah, but it's also not just about the policeman. It's also about the public. Sometimes the public is unruly. Sometimes they're the ones who also perpetuate corruption.
Now,
so we are able to deter both
sides.
You may not be told this publicly because given this thankless job that you have, the currency that you're most likely to see is criticism.
Yes, which is okay. You know what? I argue in Swahili.
Yes,
I always tell them in Swahili that kukosolewa,
yes,
which is criticism, sio kukosana.
Yes.
So being criticized, I think, is positive, and I take it as long as it is constructive criticism.
Yes, but from a human perspective, it is actually good to hear that people who consume the things that your office actually does for the public, that it's actually, you are doing a good job.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
Fantastic. And the way forward, I know you're in a rush to leave. So the way forward, what can we expect to see in 2020 in this, because it's been quite rigorous, or vigorous rather, in 2019. What do we expect to see in 2020 in this fight against corruption?
Convictions.
Now,
Hopefully convictions.
Can you guarantee us
On that note.
some high-profile
good news.
convictions?
Oh, hopefully. I can't, it's not, as I said,
Of
it's not
course,
only
of
about
course.
me.
Yeah.
But we are trying. And I think some of them are coming to an end, especially the ones that began in 2018. And hopefully we will be seeing convictions.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Once you get convictions, right? Once you get, not if, right? I'm just saying, once you get convictions, I'm sure you will be eligible for some higher honors as well. And of course, it'll go down in history as this. Look. I'm just trying
Hopefully,
to.
and if I don't get convictions, I'll still go down in history as somebody who
Yes,
came up with a Friday and
Kamata Friday.
Yes.
Kamata Friday.
But even more importantly, you see, I have an education background, and that's why I keep talking about educating the public. If the public understand what it is you are doing, they will not necessarily look for convictions. They will understand what is happening. So a conviction will mean something. A non-conviction will also be understood.
A
Yes.
conviction is emotive. The
Yes.
public are baying for blood at
Yes.
the moment.
Yes.
No,
very
it's
emotive.
important for us to get
Yeah.
convictions because if we are not able to deliver, then of course the public will also lose faith
Yes.
Sure.
in the system. And as I said, on a level playing field, we should be able to get the convictions, and hopefully that's what will happen. And we are vigilant. I also say that we are aware that certain individuals are on in high gear to frustrate those convictions, and they've been deploying all manners of tricks and trying to utilize as much of the ill-gotten proceeds that they have to their in quotes advantage. So we are aware of that, and you might also be seeing cases soon of individuals who are interfering with cases and who are attempting to do this.
Fantastic. So excellent.
Do you think the legal framework that we have so far is enough for you to actually execute your mandate freely and fully?
Yes,
It's
I
enough.
think so. The Constitution, the way the office of the ODPP was crafted in the Constitution, I think it was done that because of the experiences that we had previously prior to the multi-party experience process in Kenya and the second liberation. So we are well insulated. We've been given the adequate powers, and the laws are there.
And now the personnel.
Well,
The right people there.
It's not just it's not just about me. I have a team,
Sure.
and I'm thankful that the team that I have at the ODPP, have come up to really support and deliver this together with me. And also we have very good partners in the DCI and the EACC also now,
Sure.
and also the KRA and the central bank. So we at the MAT we have like thinking individuals who in my opinion want or have put Kenya first.
Committed
Yes.
to seeing this work.
Yes.
You made some major moves the other day when you degazetted hundreds of prosecutors. Tell us about that, because there was a lot of confusion. What is happening? Who are these prosecutors who've been degazetted?
Yeah.
Is it are you fighting criminals within your system? Just tell us.
Yeah, okay. After the 2010 constitution, when we had to move from police prosecutors to prosecutors that we have now who are lawyers and who have to be admitted in the bar. So these police officers were never degazetted. So when I came in, I found that we had quite a number. Initially in 2018, I had degazetted almost 300. And then now in 2019, another 300.
Yep.
So we degazetted the police because my argument was, if you have these police officers who are gazetted tomorrow, in some village, a police officer will come and he will do the investigation and then prosecute it.
Yeah.
By the time we realize somebody has been...
The case is done.
Yeah, and he will still have the powers to prosecute. So we degazetted all of them so that they're not able to do that, and they keep to their track, which is policing. And by the way, we had an incident in Makueni the other day where I think they said there was a drunk prosecutor who... Well, we're investigating that. But what happened is the magistrate allowed a police officer to prosecute, which is dangerous.
Right.
Because it is unconstitutional. Now, the second tier is you have prosecutors in the different quasi-investigative bodies. So like NEMA, like KRA, and other ministries, forestry, and there's also KWS. What I discovered is that one, most of them were lay people, because prior to 2010, you didn't have to be a lawyer. So one, they were lay people. Two, if they were lawyers, some of them were not admitted. And three, we had no idea whether they were trained as prosecutors or not. And this still impacts directly on us, because they practice through my powers, which is yes, I delegate.
Yeah.
So all prosecutors in Kenya derive their powers from the office of the DPP himself, who delegates to them. And this impacts on the quality of prosecutions.
Sure.
And at the end of it, we are blamed.
The image.
Precisely. Not only the image, but the quality.
The quality as
because
well.
we are a service provider to Kenyans. And it must have quality. So at the end, we decided, we will degazette them. But if they want, the institutions will apply to us. They will have to go through training. They'll have to have continuous, evaluations, and we will then be able to assure Kenyans that it has quality, and the prosecutors are the same, whether from the DPP or the other institutions.
Noordin Haji, Director of Public Prosecutions, we thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And of course for shedding light on the work that the ODPP has been doing, and the work, of course, of the multi-agency task force. Asante sana for joining us, and we wish you all the best in this fight against corruption. And of course, you've said that the year 2020 you want to see some convictions. Godspeed on that. Go slay them.
And
All the
should
best.
we ask you to come again? Please come.
Please come. You've seen we don't harass people. Asante sana. It's 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.